Ellerslie rising to debate.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to rise in the House today and speak to the Public Sector Wage Arbitration Deferral Act. And I can only state emphatically, as so many other of my colleagues have gotten up, to say that this is an incredibly gross abuse of power. And I've gotten up in this House and I've said it before that the current Premier, you know, he likes to time travel. Actually, it's been said before, and I've said it, that one of the special powers that he wishes he would have if he was a superhero would be to travel back in time. And you know, he may have said that in jest at the time, but you can believe it that that's what he really wants to do. He wants to take us back in time, right? Because he wants to take us back to a time where collective bargaining, and you know what, I think that's the problem here, is that he's an individual who's just so against this whole concept of working as a collective. He would much rather see people working as individuals and in a process where people were pitted against each other, rather than all of us working together to reach common goals. And that's exactly what's going to be happening here with the Public Sector Wage Arbitration Deferral Act. I mean, the member who spoke before me said it really well. And I want to emphasize that because I think it was such an important point. And that is that they set up this juxtaposition between people who are public sectors and then taxpayers, as if they're not the same people, as if they're not the same people that contribute to this province and the way that it works. Now, I've said it before that I used to represent in the Non-Academic Staff Association at the University of Alberta, the union that represents all workers there at the university. And the motto of our union was, "Our university works because we do." And that's exactly the point that the member was trying to make. Alberta works because the people of Alberta in that public sector that make amazing sacrifices, like the member from Edmonton Riverview, was highlighting. Public sector workers are very altruistic because they're dedicated to the people of this province. And the member from Edmonton Riverview said it really well, said it incredibly well, that these are the rights of the citizens of this province. This isn't just a voluntary, oh, we're going to treat you nice because we're going to be good to you. No, this is about the rights of people. And this government and this Premier want to run roughshod, specifically now, over the rights of workers in this province. And it's not as if it was unexpected, Mr. Speaker, because this member has a long track record of doing exactly this, not only here in this province, but at the federal level as well, of supporting bills and legislation that erode the rights of workers, not only here in this province, but across this great land of Canada. And I'll remind the members on the other side of the House that this is about the rights of our citizens, the people that work so hard to contribute to the economy of this here land and of this here province. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. And I'll say it again. And that is that an economy is supposed to serve the people and not a people serving the economy. And you know, it irks me that this government, and specifically this Premier and other members of his cabinet, continue to say that on this side of the House, we make decisions or that our government, when we were in power, was an ideological government. When so clearly he is being ideological in presenting not only this bill, but in so many others that have come before this House during this session, in this sitting. They continue to erode rights, whether it be for LGBTQ, two-spirited people, whether it be for workers, or whether it be for anybody else in this province. Because they keep going back to that juxtaposition, trying to pin some people against other people. When we should be, as a government, focusing on the common good, on mutually agreed ways of moving forward so that everybody in this province can win, and not just some of us. And that's the thing, Mr. Speaker, is that we're going back to conservative bully tactics of the 44 years of prior to this Alberta NDP government was in power since 2015 to 2019. When we came into power as a government, we decided to sit down with all stakeholders as much as we possibly could, and to create that mutually agreed understanding upon which we would create a better Alberta for all people. Bringing environmentalists together with Indigenous rights advocates, bringing people together from the private sector, bringing everybody together so that we could move this province forward into a more modern way of being, rather than pitting the citizens of this here province against each other. But yet here we go again, back to the conservative bully tactics of previous conservative governments, where they're pitting Albertans against each other. And now I hear a lot of jibber-jabber on the other side of the House right now, Mr. Speaker. Because, you know, they can't stand it when I get up in this House and I speak the truth. Because you know what, Mr. Speaker? That's what the constituents of Edmonton Ellerslie wanted. They wanted someone that would come into this House and not be afraid to say the truth. And no matter what happens to me, Mr. Speaker, I will continue to do that. Come into this House and speak the truth against the ideological tactics of this here government and this here premier that are pitting Albertans against each other. Now, this here law, this here proposed law, this bill, the Public Sector Wage Arbitration Deferral Act, this is about breaking the law. And you know what? It irks me as someone who comes from Latin American heritage, because you know what? So many times, these people who purport to support the rule of law will look at Latin America and other underdeveloped nations across this world, and they'll point the finger at us and say, look how, what's the word I'm looking for? Look how undeveloped, no, how they break the law, right? Look how corrupt, that's the word I was looking for. That's the word I was looking for. Look how corrupt those underdeveloped nations are, because they don't respect the rule of law. And yet here we have a government who's proposing a bill where they're going to be breaking the law. Mr. Speaker, this is just incomprehensible. Incomprehensible how people who will get up in this House and preach about how important democracy is, and how important liberty is, how important freedom is, and at the same time will propose to break the law of this land. And not only break the law of this land, but run roughshod over the rights of workers here in this province. The process of arbitration, it's a fair process. One designed to reach a mutual agreement between two parties. And this government is proposing to actually erode that process, that just political process. Now tell me, Mr. Speaker, does that sound like corruption? Where you want to break down the actual mutually agreed process that for so many years was decided that this would be the way? This government, this UCP government, and this premier want to erode exactly that right.
I hesitate to interrupt. In the excitement of debate, I would just like to remind all members of this House to take a wide berth or steer relatively clear of entering into language that could be perceived as making allegations against another member. Please continue.
The truth sometimes isn't well liked by members who don't like to hear it, Mr. Speaker. But like I said, the members, the constituents of Edmonton Ellerslie voted me in to be their voice and to speak that truth to power here in this House. And I'll continue to do that, Mr. Speaker, because that's my job. That's my job, and I take it very seriously. You know, this premier and this UCP government want to take us back to a time where individuals were pitted against each other, when they didn't have the collective right to bargain on their behalf as workers. Now, the International Labor Organization worked really hard for a very, very, very long time so that workers all across this world, and Canada has actually agreed to these International Labor Organization agreements on the rights of these workers. We cannot, as a government here locally in this province, decide which rights of those workers we're going to respect and which ones we aren't. When these have been internationally agreed on, that they've been nationally agreed on by the federal government, and then we need to respect those rights as we continue to move forward. We can't say, oh, these rights are okay and those rights are not. We're going to decide what we're going to respect and what we're not. Because at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, workers' rights are human rights. We're going back to a time where, and I stress it again, like the member who spoke previous to me said so eloquently. I'm going back to the idea that these same public sector workers are the same taxpayers that this UCP government and this premier here are stating that they are protecting. They're one and the same. They pay their taxes just like everybody else, and they deserve to have their rights respected. This premier wants to take us back to that time where those collective, the collective right to bargain isn't permitted. Because he would much rather see individuals pitted against each other, fighting for that opportunity to have that job that they so desperately need so that they can provide for their families and put food on the table. And I want to remind all the members of this House of that, what I call that famous conservative saying, oh no, don't bite the hand that feeds you. Because you see, the premise within that saying that is so often said to workers when they want to stand up for their rights, don't bite the hand that feeds you, is don't stand up for your rights. Because guess what? It's the people who are providing the job. You don't want to mess with them because they're going to end up firing you. And I see the member from, Rocky Mountain House Sundry? Yeah, Rimby Rocky Mountain House Sundry, laughing right now at the fact that workers' rights shouldn't be respected. And coming from him, it's real rich. Because as we all know, it's been established in this House that a worker that was working for his company who suffered sexual harassment was fired by that same member. And her rights weren't respected that day, Mr. Speaker.